set the standard high, really high, ludicrously high. If you don't have high standards of what you can accomplish, then you have no goals to go after. And it doesn't matter if you don't get there, okay? That's not the point. The point is, do you have high expectations of yourself? It's okay sometimes to put the carriage before the horse when you're nowhere near it, because it gives you this grandiose idea of where you possibly can get to. Then you got to do the work. You got to do all that work, right? And I can remember that the second I realized it was going to take me a lot longer to get stronger, or develop a stronger deadlift, or to get to be more muscular, or to develop certain kinds of tricks and flips and everything along those lines. The second I realized that, and I had set myself some great goals of things that I wanted to accomplish, then I knew I had to start putting the work in for it. And it's all about how much do you want that thing, right? So you set that standard really high, ludicrously high, and then you go and work for it. We all have our ways of getting to our goals. To some people it might look like you're jealous or that you are angry about something, but really it boils down to passion. And that passion you definitely see embodied with Vegeta, because he, especially when he went first Super Saiyan for the first time, when he was on that planet and almost got destroyed and killed by that meteor shower, he said to himself, I no longer care. I no longer cared about anything. And he was able to unlock that hidden power. And that's a critical message, right? Because if you're someone who has great passion and has a really hard time letting things go, it's oftentimes the point when you decide to let it go and not care about it anymore that you actually start to make progress on something. And that's something that I saw in this specific video clip, was that, he'd been given his all, he was tired, he was completely exhausted and beaten up beyond, all repair, and he had stopped caring about developing at that moment. And at that exact time, he let himself go, and he was actually able to break through to a new level because of that. So that to me is really profound, right? That this great passion, this great buildup of all this work that you're doing, other people might see it as something else, but at the same time, it is your way of getting to something. It doesn't have to be, with Goku, it was something completely different. He saw his friend get killed right in front of him, and that pushed him over the edge. With Vegeta, it was something completely different. And it was more about letting go of himself in order for himself to actually become something greater. Having a dark past does not mean you have to have a dark future. You can work on yourself, you can develop yourself, and you can find other ways to get from where you were, which maybe was a place that you maybe were ashamed of, or that you had a lot of things that really held you down, or you were ignorant, or maybe you've developed yourself, and you don't have to always be that person, right? Sometimes people, they don't realize that people can change and people can develop. And one of the things that Vegeta taught me about that was that even though he came from this great place of anger and destruction, and his whole life he had to deal with murder and watching planets get destroyed and his own family destroyed and torn apart, he decided later on that he was going to build a family, right? Or that he was going to show his son that he loved him, or that he was going to try and fight for something good. And not to take away from the Prince of all Saiyans and his badassery, I love the angry Vegeta. I love the Vegeta that doesn't care. I love the evil part of Vegeta sometimes, but I liked the part also that shows that you can still have that kind of inner evil in a certain way, but it doesn't have to be all of you. And he shows that he breaks through that as he grows older, and as he gets a family, and as he moves on from all of that. And there's some ups and downs he has in there, but for the most part, that's something I learned from him. It's important to let your bad blood aside in order to work an alliance with someone when you have to take on something that's a lot harder. And I think a great explanation of this, showing this, has to do with the Ginyu Force coming down and Vegeta having to set aside his bad blood with Gohan and Krillin when they're on planet Namek, and he has to decide, hey, you know what? These guys are way stronger than us, they could definitely destroy all of us. We have to combine our forces together. So one of the great things that he taught me, especially about life and about training, was that who do you know that you have some bad relationships with, that maybe you've had some arguments with, or that you have this ongoing feud with them that you can't ever get by, right? Sometime in your life you might actually have to need that person's help, and it's important for you to get over those things, not just by giving over it and saying, let bygones be bygones. You have to think of a thing that makes you guys both to a common ground, right? That's the important part, is finding a common ground, because without that, it's just going to come boiling back up again. So making a truce with somebody in order to make things better for everyone, that's what I feel like Vegeta taught me about life and about training. It's important to acknowledge when someone is better at something than you are. Why is this? Because you can actually learn from that person. If you pay attention to what someone has done who is better at you than the thing you're trying to become, then maybe you can accomplish what they've accomplished. And I find this to be more and more important as the years go on, because I'm finding that there are certain things that I just need help with. And if I meet somebody that is obviously much better at this thing than I am going to take the time to learn from that person. But first you have to acknowledge it, because that's going to help you get into a student mode and help you become more open to a situation. But prior to that, you really have to make sure that you're really listening. And if you don't do that, then you won't absorb the material and allow yourself to become stronger and better. Sometimes you need to leave to find yourself. One of my favorite moments is when Vegeta gets into the capsule and then goes off into space. When he finds out that Goku is not actually dead and can't be wished back from the Dragon Balls, he's like, "Where are you?" So he gets into this capsule and takes off. And during that time, he has this whole escapade, and eventually, he gets on that one planet and becomes Super Saiyan through that distraught feeling. But what I'm getting at with that is that he had to leave to find himself, right? He had to be alone, he had to get into his mind, he had to get into his thoughts, and he had to really get down and dirty with it. And I mean that because oftentimes myself, Oftentimes I'm completely overcrowded with thoughts and ideas, and the only way to really get it is to be by myself and to think about those things completely alone, right? And I'm not saying that people can't help you, but I am saying there is quite a lot you can do on your own and quite a lot that you have to discover about yourself. And the only way to do that is to reflect into yourself and to have an honest discussion with yourself. That's what I saw with Vegeta. He had an honest discussion with himself, and what do you know? He found himself up there. Sometimes our demons are going to come back to haunt us. You're not going to be a great person all the time, and you need to learn to accept that. When Vegeta became Majin Vegeta and he let his evil side back into himself, he actually became a stronger version of himself. Now, he became quite an evil person too. I mean, he ended up, blowing up part of an arena and probably killed some people in the process. But the point of that is, sometimes by acknowledging your evil side, you can actually become a stronger person because of it. Because after he had knocked out Goku toward the end of their little fight, he went and decided to go and battle Buu anyway. So he ended up using that extra strength to actually help him, and that did give him a bit of an advantage over fighting Buu. But as we know, it probably wasn't enough. The important thing to remember from this is that sometimes that evil coming back in, even though it's not going to be the best part of you, it could be something that could be useful to you. It's important to have opponents that you think are your equal. They push you. They force you to be better versions of yourself. And that is the cool thing that I like about Vegeta, especially with Goku. And even after defeating Goku in their battle, knocking him out, he doesn't kill Goku, right? He knows that in the future they're going to have to do battle again at some time. And it's that constant, pushing of each other that Vegeta still loves about that kind of thing. And who doesn't want to see that, right? Especially in my own training, when I want someone to really push me, I look for someone that is just a little bit better than me and will constantly be pushing me, and I'll constantly be pushing them. It's important to find your equal and a person that's going to push you. Otherwise, you have no challenges, right? And a life without challenge is a boring life.
No, listen, you have to hear this.
Often we develop hardened outer shells because of things that have happened to us in life. And it's learning to express those things when it really matters is what helps you transform into a better person. This happens on Namek when Frieza blasts Vegeta and Vegeta is bleeding out. And in that moment he's saying his last bit of words to Kakarot, to Goku, at that moment, and expressing all the pain that he went through as a child, expressing all the pain that Vegeta went through as a child. And you start to see what has made Vegeta a hardened individual. Now, it's important, okay, that we address these things. It doesn't mean you have to all the time be Mr. Emotional all the time, or Miss Emotional, or Person Emotional. It doesn't mean you have to be any of those things all the time. But it's important to know that by letting those things out, by expressing them, you actually are unlocking a deeper part of you that is really important to get down to the gritty of. Otherwise, those things will be with you all the time, all the time, and you'll feel like you never had a chance to let those things out.